Run away now.
It happened at a restaurant where my family and I visited after a long time. When the waitress handed me the menu, for some reason, she had a pale face and her hands were trembling. I held my breath as I read the message tucked into the menu. I shouldn't be here. Realizing the danger from her strange demeanor, I made up my mind to escape with my daughter. And the moment we climbed out of the restroom window, a voice stopped us. I am Lily Brown, and I am 30 years old. I recently celebrated our 5th wedding anniversary with my husband, David, who is 1 year older than me. We met at a mixer, hit it off, and got married smoothly. I have no major complaints about him. While showering our 4-year-old daughter, Mia, with love, we led a content but ordinary life as a family of 3. At that time, I believed these peaceful days would last forever. However, everything changed when something happened, a turning point that would shatter our tranquility in an instant. It all began when my husband approached me and pleaded with a serious expression.
I've been thinking about quitting my job and starting my own business.
As I listened to the details, I learned that he had been secretly preparing to launch a company while working at a real estate agency. With approximate plans in place for funding and personnel, he was eager to open his own business. Honestly, I wasn't surprised by this revelation. You see, most men aspire to have their own company, had been David's mantra since our early dating days. So, from the moment we got married, I secretly resolved to support my husband when he eventually expressed his desire for independence. Besides, my steady job in the food industry post-marriage had allowed us to build up sufficient savings. There was no reason to refuse his proposal. Understood. I replied. It won't be easy, but I'll support you as much as I can. David's relief and joy were palpable.
Really? Thank you. I'm so glad you're my wife, Lily.
Seeing his genuine happiness, I couldn't help but smile. And so, we embarked on a new life, determined to make David's dream a reality. Little did we know that despite this grand beginning, storm clouds were gathering over our family life. You're pushing yourself too hard, you know? Sometimes you need to take a break. That's part of work too. His response was curt.
You're annoying. This is a critical time, so leave me alone.
Ignoring my words, he continued to pore over documents day and night. I couldn't help but furrow my brow at his behavior. It had been a month since he launched his company, and David was visibly stressed. The business wasn't going as smoothly as he'd hoped, and some of the employees who initially supported him had left. I never expected everything to go perfectly from the start. That's why I believed in taking things at his own pace, gradually growing the business without unnecessary pressure. Listen. I reassured him. It'll be okay. Eventually, things will work out, and when times get tough, I'll be there to support you. Okay? But then he accused me.
You think you're better off because you earn more, don't you?
Surprised, I replied. What? No, that's not it. He scoffed.
Whatever. Just go away. You're getting in the way of my work.
David remained tense, impervious to my concern. But when I saw Mia, our daughter, casting an anxious glance at her completely transformed father, my heart tightened with emotion. However, even after several months had passed, the situation not only failed to improve but worsened steadily. The business struggled to gain traction, and David's frustration grew more intense. Late one night, as he sat in his study, his anguished cry echoed through the house.
Why isn't it working?
Alarmed, I rushed to the door and found torn notebook pages scattered across the room. David had a habit of jotting down his thoughts in notebooks, but it seemed he'd lost his temper and destroyed them. It's such a waste of notes. Let me help you put them back together. I offered gently. His response was harsh.
You're annoying. I don't need this crap anymore.
Despite my attempts to soothe him, he stormed out of the house like a sulking child. His behavior had changed dramatically. I couldn't hide my unease. Sometimes he'd lash out, and other times he'd mutter to himself as he left the house. Clearly, his mental state was unstable. We'd been married for a considerable time, but I'd never seen David like this. Initially, I tried to persuade him to take a break, but lately, my goal was simply to avoid upsetting him. Although I'd resolved to support him, he'd become unmanageable. How can I bring back the old David? I wondered, recalling the happier days before he quit his job. I struggled to restore our lost normalcy. However, one day, an incident occurred that I could no longer ignore. It happened when I asked my husband to pick up a simple item on his way home from work. Thank you, but there's something about this curry sauce mix that neither Mia nor I can eat. His response was defensive.
What? Are you blaming me for making a mistake? I went shopping, didn't I?
I clarified. No, I truly appreciate you getting it. It's just that you bought a different brand than the one I asked for. His anger flared.
You're annoying. How dare you challenge me like that, failing as a wife?
Despite my gentle admonishment, he raised his right hand and slapped my cheek with considerable force. I stumbled backward, but he didn't even glance at me. Muttering something, he walked away. I stood there, unable to console our crying daughter, my cheek throbbing. I had suspected something was off with David, but I never imagined he'd raise his hand against me. I can't let Mia be in danger any longer, I thought. At the same time, I finally began to consider escaping from him. The expectations I once had for the kinder version of my husband had vanished, and I felt a sense of danger. However, a few days later, something happened. It was a day when my husband suggested,
Let's go to a restaurant as a family. It's been a while. There's a place I frequent.
His usual tense demeanor seemed to vanish. David took our daughter and me outside with an oddly calm expression. Initially, I wondered if something good had happened, but his sudden change left an eerie feeling, like the calm before a storm. Yet my daughter exclaimed,
Daddy is taking us to a restaurant.
She looked excited, and I felt guilty for causing anxiety at home. Despite my suspicions, I decided to go out. The first sense of unease hit when we were led to our seats. The waitress handed each of us a menu booklet. I noticed her hands trembling slightly. When I looked up, her complexion seemed off, pale, perhaps unwell. Is she feeling okay? I wondered. Lost in thought, I quickly drank the water she'd brought.
I'll get a refill.
He headed toward the kitchen. Despite the oddities, I decided to focus on ordering. I opened the menu, determined to make a choice. In the next moment, the characters before my eyes made me widen them in shock. What? There, inexplicably sandwiched between the menu pages, was a single sheet of paper. And on that note, trembling letters spelled out, "Run away now." As I pondered this, my mind raced through past events. David's sudden violent outbursts, followed by an oddly gentle demeanor. The waitress's strange behavior. And now, this note seemingly meant for me alone. The more I thought about it, the more unnatural the situation felt, and anxiety crept in. I must get out of here. Intuitively sensing danger, I calmly pretended everything was fine. Confirming that David had returned to his seat, I discreetly took my daughter Mia's hand. Let's go to the restroom for a moment. Subtly grabbing our belongings and leaving the table. Fortunately, the restaurant's restroom had a large window, one I could slip through. We'll escape from here. And so, successfully fleeing the restaurant with my puzzled daughter, I was about to put some distance between us and the unknown danger. But just as we moved away, a voice called out from behind.
Wait.
Startled, I spun around. It was the same waitress who had handed us the menu earlier, now running toward us. She must have anticipated our escape from the restroom.
There's something I need to tell you.
And as she revealed a horrifying truth I hadn't known, fear and determination collided within me. I resolved to bring justice to my changed husband. The next day, I was abruptly awakened by the sound of forceful knocking on the door. It was David, his anger evident in his voice.
Hey! You're probably here, aren't you? I know.
I hurried downstairs, signaling to my parents, who had also woken up due to the commotion. Alone, I approached the front door. Unbeknownst to David, I had taken Mia and sought refuge at my parents' house after escaping from the restaurant. If he continued shouting like this, it would draw unwanted attention from our neighbors. I took a deep breath, unlocked the door and opened it just a little bit. David burst in with incredible force.
Open up. Why did you leave without telling me?
Could you please keep it down? You're disturbing the neighbors.
Betrayal. You're a traitor. This wretch.
His face flushed. He continued to berate me. It was hard to believe that the person before me was the same one I had once loved, the one with whom I'd shared laughter at our wedding and watched our daughter grow. Who could have predicted this outcome? If it had come to this, I should have stopped. It was all over. Ever since that moment when we fled the restaurant, I had learned a shocking truth. I could never return to my family with him. I know. You were trying to kill Mia and me, weren't you? My words seemed to unsettle David for the first time. His body tensed. After escaping from the restaurant, Tracy, the waitress who had warned us of danger, comforted my bewildered daughter and me, explaining everything in a safe place.
You and your daughter have peanut allergies, right?
Yes, that's correct. But why do you ask?
Actually, your husband was trying to feed you peanuts.
According to Tracy, at that moment, while we thought he had gone to get water, my husband had secretly ordered a salad with peanut dressing, hoping we wouldn't notice. For Mia and me, who have allergies, that ingredient was as dangerous as poison, threatening our lives. Given my vigilance about food, from snacks to canned goods and even curry sauce mix, David couldn't have been unaware. In essence, he intentionally ordered allergens, attempting to send us to our demise. Were you after insurance money, perhaps? Independence seemed tough for you. As anger bubbled up, I trembled. While I feared for my life, what infuriated me most was that David had considered harming our precious daughter. If it were merely financial hardship, I would have supported him tirelessly. After all, mutual support is the essence of marriage. But how could he entertain such a horrifying idea about our sweet child?
I didn't do any of that. It's all your imagination. There's no evidence.
His panicked voice echoed through the room as I stared at him down. Unfortunately, I have all the evidence I need. Remember the notebook you kept at home? David seemed lost for words, perhaps realizing he'd been caught. But why did Tracy, the waitress who warned us about the danger, know about our allergies and manage to thwart this incident? The answer lay in his habit of keeping a notebook. Tracy had accidentally glimpsed its contents while refilling water. In that notebook, she found details about our allergies and the entire plan to harm us. Though surprised, Tracy couldn't be sure if he was serious, so she couldn't report it to the police. Instead, she discreetly alerted the entire restaurant staff. When David brought us there, chaos erupted in the kitchen. Before we came here, I retrieved the notebook with the plan.
Wait. Return it. Without that, I
continued. It's already in police custody. Finally grasping the gravity of the situation, David turned pale and trembled. I found the incriminating notebook in the study. As a witness to the fact that he intentionally ordered a menu item containing peanuts, I took Tracy with me and rushed to the police station with evidence. The police promptly accepted our complaint as a case once they reviewed the surveillance footage from the restaurant, which clearly captured David's behavior. My parents reported it earlier, so the police will arrive soon. I revealed, my ears attuned to distant sirens. As I stared at my pale-faced husband, he began to panic.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way. Please help me. Tell the police it was a misunderstanding.
He desperately pleaded with me, tears streaming down his face. That's impossible, isn't it? My husband stammered.
The company is on the brink of collapse, and I need money. That's why I'm so sorry, forgive me.
But as I coldly dismissed him, his apologies fell on deaf ears. No matter how happy our days had been, I couldn't forgive this man who had threatened my life and that of our precious daughter. Make amends properly. I pushed him away. David slumped, defeated, as if he'd given up on everything. After being taken to the police station, my husband was promptly arrested for his actions in this case. Naturally, the company he had started collapsed, and he won't be leaving prison anytime soon. Our marriage couldn't survive this ordeal, and we divorced. Through a lawyer, I am seeking $30,000 in compensation from my husband for both myself and our daughter. Having completely severed ties with him, my daughter and I have moved to a new town, where we now enjoy peaceful days. My focus is on showering my daughter with love, ensuring she never feels lonely.
How did you find this story? If you enjoyed it, consider subscribing to our channel. Until next time.
I'm Aria, a 38-year-old housewife. I live with my husband, Aaron, who is 2 years older, and our high school daughter, Jessica. We had been living in an apartment for a long time, but 5 years ago, we built a house and moved to the town we live in now. Having achieved my dream of owning a home, surrounded by a loving husband and a sweet daughter, I was spending my days full of happiness. However, I had one concern. It was about our neighborly relationships. A middle-aged woman named Stephanie, who lived next door, loved gossiping about others. Gossip lovers exist everywhere, but she was clearly excessive. Desperate to know about other families' affairs, thanks to her, my family got caught in a terrifying trouble. Stephanie, who appeared to be around 50, had been living in this town since childhood. She knew everything about who lived where, who married whom, and when children were born in the neighborhood. She loved to chat and immediately started talking to me when we had just moved in, asking where we came from. I was happy to have someone friendly when we didn't know anyone else, and she would give us small gifts and take care of us. So at first, I had a good impression of her. I thought it was nice to have a kind neighbor. But over time, I started finding her behavior annoying. Stephanie seemed to be obsessed with our family's affairs, prying into even private matters. Questions like whether my daughter had a boyfriend could be laughed off. But when she asked about our savings and my husband's salary, I was taken aback. When I said I don't like to answer about money, she pursed her lips and said, "Why so secretive between neighbors?" No matter how much she sulked, I kept silent. It's incredibly inappropriate to ask someone directly about their savings. Additionally, there was another reason I didn't want to share secrets with her. Not only did she ask questions, but she would also spread the information she got from me to others immediately. I was shocked multiple times when things I told only her spread throughout the neighborhood in no time. And yet, she never talked about herself. The only thing I knew was that her husband was so busy he was rarely home. The rest of her private life remained a mystery. It's unfair how she wants to know everything about others but reveals nothing about herself. Because of this, I gradually started to dislike her and limited our conversations to minimal greetings when we met outside. For a while, she kept pressing me, but eventually, she seemed to realize I was avoiding her and stopped approaching me. To an outsider, it might seem cold to act distant despite living next door. But to protect my and my family's privacy, keeping a distance was necessary. For a while, we lived peacefully without any incidents. One morning, when I went to take out the trash, I ran into Stephanie, who was just leaving her house. We locked eyes, and I felt a jolt, but I greeted her with a simple good morning and tried to pass by. However, she grabbed my arm, saying, "Arya, wait a minute." Oh no, caught again. I sighed internally. What could she want to ask during the busy morning? Unlike my gloomy self, she was grinning. Despite her smile, she said with a voice full of spite, "I heard your husband got promoted recently? I'm so envious." Her words sent chills down my spine. My husband's promotion was a recent event. We hadn't told Stephanie or anyone else in the neighborhood. The only ones who knew were his boss and our family. As I stood frozen, she continued to strike. "With that hefty raise, you don't even need to work part-time, do you?" She spat these words and left. Once again, I was stunned. Not only did Stephanie know about the promotion, but she also knew I was considering part-time work. Feeling uneasy, I reported this to my husband that night when he came home from work. I asked if he had mentioned the promotion to anyone, but he confirmed he hadn't. We were both baffled about how Stephanie found out. Just then, we heard hurried footsteps rushing down the stairs, and our daughter Jessica burst into the living room. Breathless, she said, "Come to my room right now." I tried to calm her down, asking, "What's wrong? Why are you so frantic?" But she insisted, "Just come quickly," pulling us by our arms. Following her upstairs, we entered her room. Jessica pointed under her bed. "Mom, Dad, look at this." There, under the bed, partially hidden, was a white power strip plugged into an outlet. At first, I didn't understand why Jessica was making such a fuss. To me, it just looked like a normal power strip. But my husband and Jessica had turned pale. Then, my husband said something shocking.
"This is a bugging device."
Hearing the word bugging device, I almost screamed, but my husband motioned for silence, so I quickly covered my mouth. I had only imagined bugging devices as special equipment, so it still looked like an ordinary power strip to me. However, Jessica, having just seen a drama with a similar device, immediately recognized it. We quickly searched online and found many bugging devices that looked just like the one in Jessica's room. Who, when, and how did someone set up such a thing? My husband and I both thought of the same person, but as we were thinking, the culprit was probably listening to our conversation through the device. We decided to leave Jessica's room and return to the living room. According to Jessica, there was no device when she cleaned her room and moved the bed 3 days ago. So, it must have been set up very recently. However, we hadn't let anyone other than family into the house for the past month, so it must have been done by someone breaking in from outside. I felt both fear and anger boiling up. No matter the reason, invading my daughter's room and planting a bugging device was unforgivable. My husband felt the same. So, we decided to set a trap to catch the culprit. Well. If you're ready for this. No mercy. That night, we had Jessica sleep in another room, and my husband and I got to work. In hindsight, we should have hired a professional, and I regret our recklessness now. But at that moment, we were too enraged to wait. To lure the culprit, we set up a trick to make them think the bugging device was malfunctioning. We placed crumpled newspaper next to the device and directed a strong fan at it to create constant rustling noise. After setting the trap, my husband hid in Jessica's bed, and I waited in the adjacent room. We waited for the culprit to arrive. In the end, our plan succeeded. The culprit fell for the trap and came to check the device. According to my husband, it took less than an hour for noises to start outside the room. He jumped out of the bed and opened the curtains to see a man standing on the balcony. The man tried to flee, but my husband quickly tackled him on the balcony, immobilizing him. When my husband turned on the flashlight to see the man's face, he was shocked. The eavesdropper turned out to be Stephanie's son. I also rushed over from the next room when I heard a noise on the balcony and was astonished to see him after so many years. Stephanie had always said her son was brilliant, went to university out of the prefecture after high school, and landed a job at a top-tier company. So why was he here? Moreover, his once fresh-faced appearance was gone. He looked haggard and even had a scruffy beard. What could have happened? My husband and I were puzzled. My husband asked,
Are you the one who planted the bug?
He nodded silently. Apparently resigned, Stephanie's son offered no resistance, hung his head quietly, and had tears in his eyes. My husband was exasperated by his demeanor.
If you're going to cry, why did you try to bug our house?
With a small voice, he began to speak. According to him, he had graduated from university and found a job at a fairly large company, but he couldn't adapt to the workplace and quit after just 1 month. He returned to his parents' house and, instead of job hunting or even getting a part-time job, spent his days playing games. He thought he was resting his tired body and mind, but in reality, he was just a recluse. He stayed home all day and only went out late at night, so my husband and I had no idea he was living next door. Finally, we understood why Stephanie never wanted to talk about her home life. As for why he tried to bug our house, it was because his mother instructed him to. She was obsessed with our family and told her reclusive son, "If you succeed, I'll give you some spending money." So, he planted the bug. My daughter had sometimes slept with the window open on hot nights, and he took advantage of this, climbing up from the garden shed to the balcony to enter the room. His only goal was to plant the bug, but it was terrifying to think what could have happened if he had intended to harm her. I was very close to my daughter and often chatted with her in her room. He listened in on those conversations and learned about my husband's promotion and my plans to start a part-time job. He came to check the bug when he heard strange noises and couldn't hear voices anymore, thinking the device was broken. It was already past 1 a.m., but after hearing his story, my husband and I took him to Stephanie's house and rang the intercom. No one answered for a while, but after multiple rings, Stephanie responded irritably. "Who is it at this hour?" I spoke to the camera. "Your son was caught sneaking onto our balcony, so we brought him here." Stephanie hurriedly came to the door in her pajamas. Seeing us and her son standing together, she was initially shocked but then put on a defiant expression. "What do you want at this late hour?" She feigned ignorance, which angered my husband.
Your son planted a bug in our daughter's room. Don't pretend you didn't know.
Stephanie remained unfazed. "A bug? I don't know anything about that." She laughed dismissively and turned away. I was appalled by her brazen attitude, but then she shocked us further. "He did it on his own. It has nothing to do with me." She abandoned her own son. He looked devastated. Seeing him so sad and silent, we felt a bit sorry for him, but a crime is a crime. "We'll be filing a police report." "Go ahead, do whatever you want." She still acted like it was someone else's problem. Then I added, "We'll also report this to your husband." She turned pale. "Please, don't tell my husband." She clung to me, begging. It seemed her husband was very strict. According to her son, he was fed up with her gossiping and had moved out a few years ago, tired of her behavior. She had lied about him being busy with work. Their marriage was failing. Despite this, he still supported her and their son financially. If he found out about this, it would likely be the final straw. If they divorced, Stephanie, a stay-at-home mom, would be out on the streets. She begged us not to tell her husband, but my husband and I were not lenient. "We heard everything from your son. Paying your child to bug someone else's house is despicable. Both of you need to atone for your actions." We left her house. A few days later, Stephanie's husband visited us. After calling the contact number given by their son, he came to apologize. He apologized for his son's actions and even paid us compensation, insisting he would recover it from Stephanie. It was our first time meeting him, and he seemed very reasonable, unlike Stephanie. We felt a bit sad thinking that their son might have turned out better living with him. But crimes can't be undone. He was arrested for trespassing and fined. Despite being young, he had a criminal record, but it was his own doing, even if he was coerced by his mother. Shortly after, Stephanie and her husband divorced. The neighborhood quickly learned of the scandal, and unable to bear the shame, Stephanie left town. No one knows where she went, but her son remains a recluse, likely living a miserable life in hiding with his mother. As for us, we used this incident as a lesson to improve our home's security. We are determined to protect our daughter and ensure we never face such a crime again. Goodbye, everyone. How was this story? Please subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.